The Evolution Security Podcast.
Let's talk about an awesome training opportunity. We are super pumped to be hosting John Murphy of FPF Training for his Street Encounters, Skills, and Tactics class, the 5th and 6th of November 2022, just outside Fort Bragg, North Carolina. This class will teach life-saving material to include Stop the Bleed Medical, Pre-Encounter Management, Pre-Assault, Proper Pepper Spray Use and Deployment, Essential Shooting Skills, Scenario-Based Decision-Making, Post-Fight, and more. For tickets, go to our show notes and find the class link, or go to John's website, fpftraining.com, and look for the class in his course calendar. Also, listen to John on our podcast, episode 66, to learn more about him and tap into his vast knowledge. Come join us for our EvoSec defensive pistol class just outside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina on June 11th, 2022. This is an 8-hour Level 1 pistol course focusing on a fundamental defensive pistol platform from the holster, moving into dynamic shooting principles from concealment. Even though marksmanship is covered, it is a class that focuses on marksmanship and gun handling skills from a fighting perspective. You will leave this class having a solid shooting platform from extreme close distance out to typical fighting range. Most importantly, you'll leave understanding how to practice and become more capable of defending yourself and or a loved one in the event of a violent encounter. For tickets and more information, go to the Eventbrite link in the show notes or go to our website at evosec.org and find it on our upcoming events. Come train with us.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast, also known as the EvoSec Podcast. I've got my twin brother, Eric Davis, here. How are you doing, brother?
Man, doing wonderful. Man, it's a pretty good evening here in North Carolina.
Good deal. And hey, we've got a really special guest, Mr. Walt Settlemyer of the Distinguished Savage podcast. Man, it's awesome to have a fellow traveler on the line with us here. Walt, thanks for coming on. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good, man. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. It's always incredible talking to you guys.
Oh, it's awesome. You know, we'll just say real quick and move on to a couple things. But you know, it is nice that we have this brethren of. There's a lot of like-minded people like you, us. Mike Seeklander and the American Warrior Society and the Weems guy. There's a lot of cool people that we could say technically, you know. We're kind of competing for listeners, I guess. Someone might think that way, but we really aren't, right? We want everybody to join in on the information. And hey, you know what? We all can't put out a podcast every day. So between all of us, we can have plenty of content for our listeners. But Eric, I want to pass it on to you for a second, buddy. See what you have to talk about.
Well, Aaron, unfortunately, we can't help but bring up that we are praying for the young children, the family members, and the community members of Uvalde, Texas, in this very, very tragic shooting that just took place. You know, I'll just say this. We know that evil exists in the world, and there is no better way to put it that this was just pure evil in this despicable human being that went in and would kill 19 children. I mean, to me, first off, a person in that state has to be a sociopath, and not that we're psychologists or psychiatrists can diagnose that stuff, but the person has to be mentally deranged to do something of that sort. But, we just want to make sure that we mention that we're praying for all those people in that community, and especially those children and their family members. Of course, the hyperbole has hit the airwaves, and these children, their parents, in many cases, hadn't even been informed that it was in fact their child that had passed away. And of course, the leftists come out to use this and politicize it, which is despicable in and of itself. But we knew that was going to happen. That shouldn't surprise us, but still it's despicable as well. But to me, and Walt, you and I are former soldiers, and I just can't help but think that, everybody's saying, hey, we gotta commit to gun control, which we know is not the answer. And Walt, wouldn't you agree that, frankly, these schools need to improve on their physical security SOPs?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at places like Israel where they have the concentric rings of security for schools, for anything important to them. And it blows my mind that no one wants to address that particular subject, I know the idea of arming teachers is quirky because it's also difficult when you talk about arming first responders, right? But if someone who is going to be a responsible gun owner, and they're going to take the time and the energy and the responsibility, quite frankly, to train, to learn, to understand how to use that weapon, it's a tool like anything else, and it is beyond my ability to fathom why there are certain groups that go straight to, like, let's get rid of all the guns. I'm like, they're never going to be gone, right? That's never going to happen. And people who obtain guns illegally or are going to use guns for nefarious purposes are going to do that. I mean, in the UK, it's knives, right? So they're like, no, let's get rid of all the knives. And I don't understand it. It's not a critical thinking. It doesn't use critical thinking or logic to answer a huge question that we have to answer, right? Which is school security. Yeah, it blows my mind.
Well, and again, we were speaking pre-show. All the individuals suggesting that we need to take all the guns away, because that's what they're saying. Hey, we got to get rid of guns. I know there's it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
But these are the same individuals that have armed law enforcement or Secret Service around them all the time, armed. Mm-hmm. So it's rather rich that they would suggest that. But we know what it really boils down to is that they're looking to politicize it and gain power.
Yeah. Well, and they politicize it because, guys, we do know this, that as long as there's been elite individuals that want to control populations, let's even just say the peasants or the common people, there's been bans on weapons for peasants and common people throughout history. It's changed multiple times. Like, you can look in portions of medieval time and see some cities and kingdoms where you could carry weapons out in the hillside, but you couldn't in the city, or it was banned across the board. There were some mid-class, let's just call them, in feudal systems where they could have weapons, but the peasants and, of course, the serfs even below them, they could not have weapons. The point is that we are up against, and we've always been up against them. Again, our revolution was against gun controllers, right? That was part of the issue. It's a common thread throughout human history between people and their governments. So, but we know that this is the fact. They just don't like the peasants being armed. And so then they jump right knock people over on their way to a camera to start the politicization of an event where poor little kids were murdered. And they want to say that we don't care about those kids because we're concerned about freedoms. We can be concerned and devastated about young children parents, kids, that's the most devastating thing that could ever happen to a parent. We can have concern about them and our hearts break about them, and at the same time be concerned about the freedom of over 300 million people.
Well, and to add to that, Aaron, is that yes, we're concerned about our liberties, but let's face it, we're concerned about what will actually help protect children in schools.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And it isn't gun control. None of the gun control that's being suggested would have stopped this from happening. But the reality is, we know that in every instance, even in this instance, why did the situation end? It ended when he faced armed police officers that killed him. Let's just face it. It takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun, which is an adage we use often. But I've been asked this question today by multiple people, because I've got individuals that I work with that, of course, are on the gun grabbing side, and are like, well, what do you suggest we do? So I am not a security expert. None of us claim to be experts at school security, but let's face it, physical security, and Walt, we spoke on this too. You and I are both prior service. Mm-hmm. It's ingrained in us, basic physical security. And so what can the schools do? Now, some of them do this, but bottom line is they need to absolutely have better fences around the schools with single control entry points. Mm-hmm. And single entry points, controlled entry doors, only one door, that is, and all the other doors need to be locked except for exit for emergencies. And frankly, I think that they need to add a badging system to schools. What are your thoughts on that? And we just spoke on, yeah. Of course, the most important aspect is we'd like to see armed teachers even that go through rigorous training. Of course, they should go Absolutely. Through proper training. But what are your thoughts on that physical security aspect?
Man, I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, it boggles my mind to look at. So you look at some of the places that have the strictest gun control laws, have the highest gun crime, and it's all illegal activity. Chicago and California and New York, and I don't understand how you can make this completely illogical jump to if we got rid of all the guns, because that does not work. That's not going to work. Let's just be honest with ourselves. I think too, you're absolutely right on the whole idea of we need to have better security at schools. And the thing is, if it's important to us, we'll spend money on it. If it's not, we won't. That's with every government agency, because I'm pretty sure that the majority of high-end private schools have much more stringent security than most public schools. And you look at, there are teachers out there. Look at the, was it Whitehall? I think was it Whitehall in Texas? The church shooting, one good guy with a gun, right, was able to stop that shooting. It would have been great if he'd have gotten on task quicker, but that is what it is. But he still was able to neutralize that threat. And my curiosity too is no one wants to take the time, like Brian and Greg from the Left of Greg podcast talk about this all the time. There were plenty of indicators for this guy before he ever picked up that gun. And everybody's like, well, you can't really do anything. And I hear all these straw man arguments about all these different things. I'm like, I just taught as an example, I taught a course, a situational awareness course, and just sort of hey, what to do in case there's a shooter for a private ER down in Houston. And one of the things that one of the receptionists told me is I work at a hospital part-time, and there's a guy that we all think is going to be the guy who's going to be the active shooter. And I'm like, have you talked to HR? It's like, well, they say they can't do anything because he hasn't really done anything. I'm like, see, that breakdown beforehand, no one wants to talk about the mental health issue. No one wants to talk about getting that whole left of bang thought process. They want to wait till something happens, and then they want to say, oh, let's take away all the guns because that's the problem. And that's, what was it? Was it the kid at Virginia Tech who used a hammer to attack people? I think it was. Was
Yep.
it Virginia? Yeah. Like, someone's going to
so, yeah.
find something. I mean, and like Cliff Byerly says, anything can be used as a hammer if you hold it right. And
Yep.
if someone has nefarious intent, they're going to create chaos with something.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't take firearms, just like you said. It could take a machete and not a knife. You know, that you can kill a lot of people very quickly with bladed weapons. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's something that you know, I keyed on something that you said. You know, we just sent $40 billion to the Ukraine, and I'm not saying that isn't a worthy cause, but if securing our children, our most precious children and treasures, I think we could have used some of that money to harden schools.
I agree.
You know, because that's where a lot of that security funding comes from, is from the federal level. Mm-hmm. So,
well, guys, if I can interject in here, number one, and then I'm going to digress just a little bit, but it cracks me up because I, of course, start perusing articles on sites that I know are going to disagree with me, and that's great because you get exposed to it, and sometimes it makes you mad, like it made me mad today. But they always come back as putting one more gun. If you're going to arm a teacher, that's just putting one more gun in there, as if that's innately bad. Okay, and then they see it and literally just dismiss it summarily. That won't help. Wait a minute. Okay, remember the old, all the time when they're talking about legislation, if it can only save one life. Wait a second. If you have an armed, let's say in this rural Texas school, there's three teachers or individuals that are armed. Will one of them be near this guy when he starts shooting people? Maybe, maybe not. But what if he is? If he is and he stops him from killing all 19, unfortunately, he doesn't stop the first half of the people he shoots. Terrible. But if we can save 10 lives, aren't they usually for that, right? No, it's not foolproof, but it's more of a chance than they have if they aren't armed at all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about our sponsor, Keepers Concealment, the original authority on appendix holsters and appendix carry, offering high-performance handgun training, specializing in concealed carry performance. Check out their flagship holster, the Keeper. This holster set the standard for quality, comfort, concealability, and retention. Keepers Concealment is also a proud affiliate of CCW Safe, the truly proven legal service membership company offering dedicated legal defense. Heaven forbid you're forced to use lethal force. Use code KC10OFF and check them out at ccwsafe.com/keepers. To buy a holster, sign up for a class, inquire about hosting a course, or join CCW Safe, find it all at keepersconcealment.com and use Evo Twins at checkout for 10% off. Now back to the interview. You know, there are a lot of prior service, both military and law enforcement teachers. And so I'm not saying you have to be prior service or law enforcement to be an armed teacher. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that you do, at least, you know, for the folks out there that are going to throw up their hands and go, oh, no, we don't want to arm civilian teachers. Well, then maybe assuaging some of them is start with prior service, start with prior law enforcement, and see where it goes. You know, it's just, we know that is the ultimate defense against these shootings. Is it's known also that these schools have possible armed teachers, not just the police officers. That's very important, But I think the biggest deterrent in these schools is going to be that it's well known that teachers can be armed. In Florida, and I don't know all the details right now, guys, but I do believe that Florida passed a law to start allowing teachers to be armed. I don't know if it's been implemented or it's still going through the process, but at least they're moving in the right direction. And I'll find the articles that I read on that. I just at this recording, I don't have all the details.
Well, if you recall, the despicable shooter in Buffalo, in his little manifesto, he said he chose a city in his state, knowing that he would be less likely to run into someone with a gun. He spelled that out.
Absolutely, and let's face it. These folks that go and shoot children at schools, they have chosen, what they know as a soft target.
Exactly.
And let's just, before we kind of go on and have a good talk here with Walt, unfortunately we had to talk about this tragedy, but when we said we kind of talked about it just a little bit, guys, but the whole fact that politicians get in front of you and say that they don't want this to happen again, like Kamala Harris saying, we can stop this. They might as well tell you to your face that they're going to end all crime, that they're going to stop cancer, that there's going to be no more heart attacks and heart disease. That is as true of a reality as saying that you can stop events like this, tragedies like this. There are over 300 million people in this country. There are approximately there's over 400 million guns, and apparently owners, there's about 120 million. But let's not count these individuals as gun owners. Let's just say we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of guns, hundreds of millions of people. And there are roughly 50 million people with varying degrees of mental illness in this country. Mm-hmm. And how are you going to stop Okay, we've had 4, from what I recall, this year we've had 4 of these terrible events. Forgive me, audience, if I'm missing one, but we've had 4 individuals out of 320 million people commit an act like this, and they've had 1 or 2 guns each. Let's say they had 2 guns each. 8 guns out of 400 million guns. How are you going to stop the rest of those? How can you do that? Guys, is that possible?
No. And I think
not completely.
No. And I think the difficult thing too is it's again, it's such a straw man argument because if you think about it, you have good guys with guns. You have people who have nefarious intent who want to harm people, right? The mental health issue aside, what frustrates me is to take this, let's say the left, right, for lack of a better term, because I don't really know another way to put it, right?
Yeah.
So, but people who are anti-gun are going to take whatever they can to push the narrative that they want, right? And it's frustrating because you see it in so many different. You see it in they're trying to get rid of the rule of law. They're making it easier for criminals. And again, this is a bit of my conspiracy theorist side, right? Like, I always want to know why. Why are you pushing this agenda or that agenda, whatever it is, whether it's certain aspects of COVID, whether it's certain aspects of gun control, whether it's certain aspects of letting crime run rampant, right? It pushes a narrative. It pushes fear, right? And 2, I mean, you can look at Australia as a perfect example of, they took away the guns and so basically pretty much everyone in Australia is at the behest of like, all right, you got to stay in your house. You can't go anywhere. Like if your business fails, if you can't go get food, whatever it is, right? They control that population completely.
Oh yeah.
And the tragedy, any school shooting is absolutely tragic and it is horrible and despicable. it blows my mind that, again, I'll say the left, for lack of a better term, takes that and uses that as ammo for, God, that's a horrible way to put it, but uses that as fodder for their overarching and always their gun control thing, right? And because you don't see people with guns saying, oh, like, hey, look, we got to get the gun control people who are pro-gun don't push that narrative. They only defend our narrative, I guess, of we, hey, the right to keep and bear arms, right? It's always the left, for lack of a better term, right? Or anti-gun folks that use these kind of things as this jumping off point to keep the pressure on, to keep fear up, and fear is how you control people.
Yeah,
right?
I think the other side of that, right, and I think that's what you're saying, is that we don't jump on these. We don't jump on these things right after they happen and say the Second Amendment will stop all this. That's not what we're saying at all. Yes, we have to come out, unfortunately, and yes, comment on this tragedy, but we are put on the defensive, and that's on purpose. That they want us to be on the defensive as people that would comment on this stuff.
Absolutely.
And again, we can be very concerned about protecting these children, but what about the other children's rights to protect themselves when they get older? It's the concept of freedom, liberty, and individuality is lost. I mean, even people like us that do understand, we don't talk about it enough.
Well, and I think this is a good way to look at it and segue into getting into our jovial conversations is that, and this is substantiated every single year. It doesn't matter, regardless of what numbers you want to believe, it ranges from anywhere from about 250,000 people a year upwards to 2.5 million people. They are saved every year with a firearm, and 85% of the time the trigger doesn't have to be pulled. So what I would ask those individuals that want to eliminate the Second Amendment is how many of those individuals, of that 250 to 2.5 million individuals every single year, how many of those people will perish if they don't have the abilities to defend themselves?
Good point.
So, that's something that is definitely not understood, and it's skipped over by the left, as you said, Walt, because they don't want that narrative to be pushed out there. But anyway, again, our prayers are with all of those families. And, my heart is breaking over it. I think of those children, and, I can't help but say that I had some tears last night, thinking about this. So, but anyway, let's move into something a little more, I'll just stop there. Walt.
Yes,
man, I'm sorry that you came on the show, that we had to talk about something so serious, but I know you understand.
I do, man, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it a bit, right? Because it's important. They're important conversations to have, because we do want our kids to be safe, right? I don't have kids, because me having kids is like the blind leading the blind, obviously. but man, kids are one of the toughest patient populations that I run on. Right, I can run cardiac arrest on old folks all day long, right? But like, they've had a good run, right? They're at the end of their life. When you run on a kid, it's like their life's just beginning. This is a traumatic event, man. So it's. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, hey, on that note, I'll just say real quick. From the literal second I saw my son Josh born, the world changed. That is not hyperbole. The world changed. Everything was before being a father, and everything has been being after. And now, dude, I've gotten better about it, but I used to have to rush to turn a movie off if it had anything about children getting hurt, because it devastated me. But I remember the when they brought my son Josh out, they laid him on the table because they had indication he might have some junk in his lungs from the birth. And that they needed to clean his lungs out, and they've got this tube down his throat. And here I'm witnessing my son for the first time within the, first 30, 40 seconds of meeting him. And he's got this tube in his mouth. He's trying to get it out. And then I stuck my hand on his chest like this, and his little hands wrapped around my hand like this. And I'll never, ever forget it. And see, it's hard for people, parents out there, you know what I'm talking about, people out there that are not parents like you, Walt, you can still get the gravity of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so to think of the tragedy of my son losing him, my other son losing him, that I cannot think of a worse thing on earth. So again, my sincere condolences, man.
Well, Aaron,
the parents out there right now, what they're going through, I just can't fathom it.
Well, Aaron, as you sit there and tell that story, I would be remiss if I didn't tell the story of when my son was first born. And shout out to Nick. He just had his 22nd birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday, Nick.
Semper Fi, son, Marine Corps.
Oh, Devil Dog.
Yeah. And so when he was born, same thing, Aaron. It's like he was born and the nurses brought him out and they've, cleaned him up. And I'm sitting there watching him, and I don't know, what I'm doing at first, but, I'm just amazed, and it's instant love. And then he stopped breathing. And I said, he stopped breathing, I'm freaking out. And the nurse calmly walked up. She said, just touch his chest. And I touched his chest. He starts breathing again. And he did that a couple of times, and I was just terrified that, something was wrong. He's like, no, this is normal. This happens. And yeah, man, now he's a badass, a Marine, and still my best buddy. So, man, shout out to him.
Awesome.
Let's talk about our sponsor, Origin. Pete Roberts was told you could not make jiu-jitsu gis in the U.S. Well, Pete and his team have proven the naysayers wrong by producing the best jiu-jitsu gis on the market. I, for one, love my Path gi. It is lightweight, yet strong and super comfortable, with an innovative technical fiber weave that is also IBJJF legal. The Wave logo is legit. It has woven belts that blend between white, blue, purple, brown, and black, hence the name The Path. They also produce jeans, hoodies, handmade leather boots, and Jocko fuel supplements that help us recover from hard workouts, Force on Force classes, and simply make us feel better and more energized through the day. I just finished a hard workout in my garage gym and rewarded myself with a delicious mint chocolate milk protein shake and coconut milk. Man, it's like dessert. If you're looking for any Origin products, please go to our show notes and click on the affiliate link, or look for the icons in our blog section of our website at evosec.org. It helps us keep this podcast free and keeps the lights on. If you get something out of this show and you feel like helping us out, use EvoSec10 for 10% off at checkout. Now, back to the interview.
Well, Eric, I say we give Walt an opportunity to give us some background. He probably doesn't get to talk about himself on his awesome show, which, by the way, the Distinguished Savage podcast. It is an awesome podcast. I've really been enjoying listening to the episodes that have come my way, and it was awesome being able to go on your show, Walt. That was just a blast. So we couldn't pass up the opportunity to have you on and have another fun conversation. So why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bio on where you're from, what you do, et cetera, and how you got into this lifestyle of getting harder to kill.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was born in Western North Carolina, up just like Hickory, Newton area, just at the foothills of the mountains, right? So I grew up playing in the woods and playing Army. And my mom always said I grew up playing Army until I joined the Army, which is pretty much what happened, right? And so 11 Bang Bang, and I was also at a secondary 31 Kilo, right? So I was basically the radio man most of the time, right? Which humping that Prick 77 back in the day, right? And then went to a tax sat later on. Yeah. But yeah, because that shows my age, right? Because I'm 57. But man, so joined the military, got out, and knocked around for a while. I had this big idea. I was like, I'm going to go make a lot of money, and I realized that wasn't what was important to me. I knocked around. I was a stockbroker for a while. Hated that job. I think I did it for less than a year. It was miserable. So I'm not a hard sell guy. So going to college for a while. I've got like 280 some hours and no degree to show for it. I just burned up my GI Bill. Right. I went to U of H. I went to Cal State Northridge. I went to UCLA for a semester and various community colleges, and I just burned through being a non-resident in different places. But I knocked around until probably around 30, and I decided, I was like, all right, I got to get my shit together. I can't just keep starting careers. Because I was a restaurant manager. I worked in retail on Rodeo Drive for a while. Worked in Santa Monica, 3rd Street Promenade, is in retail, like high-end men's retail. And I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I can't just keep knocking around and going back to waiting tables or bartending. I turned 30, and I was like, all right, when was I happiest, right? What speaks to me? What speaks to my soul and my passion? And I remember right before I went in the Army in North Carolina, I was a volunteer firefighter, and I was looking through the wanted ads in the paper one day, and I was like, I saw an ad for it was for the Navy, actually. I'm like, I'm not going back in the military. I'm going to the Navy because being on a ship sounds not fun to me at all, right? God bless those guys who can do it. Does not sound fun to me. I'm a ground pounder, right, every day. But man, I was like, firefighter. And I loved it because it spoke to everything that is important to me. It's that help people, right, in their worst moment, that sense of, I grew up like most kids on, duty, honor, country. You join the Army because, it was so weird to me to fathom when guys were in the Army. I was like, I know, Judge made me be here, or, like I had to join. I'm like, what? You didn't want to be here? I was so naive. I was that naive, bright-eyed kid, it was just like, we all just want to jump on the home team and come with a big win. But man, I got into fire service from there, right? Kind of, again, that idealistic view. And that sort of led me into EMS. And so once I kind of got into EMS, a lot easier to get an EMS gig than it is a fire gig. Fire gigs are hard to get, especially on bigger municipal departments. You're competing with like 5,000-6,000 other guys who are taking written tests and all that. Got into EMS, but I remember reading in Firehouse magazine that it was easier to get a fire gig if you had your paramedic. I'm like, all right, that's it. That's the new route, right? Because at that time, I was just like, whatever, I get this idealized, romanticized view in my life. I'm a hopeless romantic in everything I do.
Awesome.
I'm like, I'm going to be a firefighter. So I'm like, what can I do? Everything I can do. I was always out. My first volunteer department wasn't a big fan of me, right? Because I was like, I was way too overzealous then. I'm like, we all need to be fit. We need to be able to pull each other out of fires. And like, I'd be out there running with air packs on, and they hated me. Right, because I was like, I was from there, but I moved to California. I'd come back, and I was big into bodybuilding then, and I was, but I was like, all right, I got to up my cardio. I got this, that, and the other. I'm like, we need to have fitness standards, and they were like, no, we don't. They're like, no, we don't. Right, so eventually, I lost a little bit of that. I ended up going to a smaller paid department, Longview, North Carolina. Shout out to Longview. It's just outside of Hickory. Took a chance on me, small little paid department. I got my EMT. Started working for a couple of EMS systems, eventually led me to Gaston EMS just outside of North Carolina. High-speed department. Within North Carolina, it is a high-speed. They have a special operations division, which is, I would say, one of the best in the country. right? That I've seen, right? We had a lot of disciplines. I was a tactical medic there. I went through CONTOMS, right? The counter narcotics terrorist medical specialty class that's put on by the Park Police. Went down to FLETC in Georgia, where Cliff's at now.
Yeah.
To learn that, right?
Get some.
We did structural collapse. We did high angle rescue. We did all the rope rescue, swift water rescue. All these disciplines within, we call it the STARS team, which I don't know if that's the best name or not, but like that's kind of a big thing back there, special tactics and rescue. But man, Gaston EMS really invested in that special operations ideology early on. This was in the late 90s, right? And they really invested heavily in some incredible training. I got some incredible training there, but I always wanted to go to a bigger department. So that sort of led me into Austin EMS, right? It's a bigger department. They had a special operations team. You can either go rescue or tactical medic there. The tactical medic, there's only like 8 guys. They don't rotate as much. Right? So I'm like, all right, well, whatever opens up first. At the time, really, man, I love rope rescue. I love the swift water. I like structural collapse, confined space. All those disciplines have always fascinated me. And I came in with a lot of training, right, already from that. And so as soon as I cleared my independent duty as a paramedic with Austin, went over to the rescue team, went through their core skills thing, and then got on the team. I was there for 19 years. Did a lot of really incredible stuff with it's still a great team. I ended up coming off probably about 2 years ago, tore the labrum in my shoulder. It was either swiftwater training or jujitsu or both. I don't know which, right? But something with that just sort of the shoulder just it wasn't the swim so much. It was doing the PT test and like always being ready for the PT test, because that 300-meter swim for time, like my time started getting closer and closer to that 8-minute mark. I'm like, all right, I got to do something, right? Because I didn't want to be the guy who's not fit, right? Who can't do the job physically, right? So, but interestingly enough, at the time I was transitioning over. I had started working on. I tried to get a whole fitness initiative going with an EMS. Let me tell you right now, paramedics are the hardest patient population to try to talk into fitness. 1 week, 24-hour shifts, right? Your sleep schedule's horrible, right? There is nothing but sugar and crap at every hospital for the medics, right? At one point there was a hospital here that had Slurpee machine for us, and I'm like, what are we doing, right?
Slurpee machine.
Oh, it was amazing, right? And we still, there's ice cream, there's chips, there's candy, there's sodas, there's Monsters, there's all this stuff, right? And so there's not a lot of healthy alternatives. But that being said, I really tried to push that fitness initiative for a while, sort of fell on deaf ears. That's a whole other conversation. But what I did do is start moving more into the defensive tactics stuff that we do, right? Our old program was, in my opinion, a little outdated and not as effective as I want to be. There was a lot of wrist locks. There was a judo throw. There were some really interesting things that I just don't feel like we're germane. You guys know, like, what do we do with a wrist lock when it's not, when you do it on your partner and it works well, but like somebody who's drunk off it has no pain, has a high pain tolerance. I'm just going to push this wrist lock harder until their wrist breaks, right? And pain compliance is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
We can get into that, but
and breaking a wrist when you're trying to take care of a patient,
never good.
Probably doesn't go over very well. Huh?
Never good. And it was a little bit of Wild West. We did a lot of punching and stuff like that, but there was no context to it. And at the time, this is probably about 3.5, almost 4 years ago, I was trying to revamp the defensive tactics program. So it was nice to be able to resign off the special operations team and sort of like really put myself full bore. I got on the board of our union because we're a civil service department. And I was able to sort of really pour myself into this defensive tactics program and build it into what I think is the best defensive tactics program any EMS system has. A lot of them use some of the sort of DT in a box sort of ideology, like, hey, how do you get out of a headlock, or here's how you get, and all that stuff has a place and a time. But I wanted to build something that worked within our workflow environment, right? Subsequently, I mean, you guys know I've taken a lot of stuff from Craig Douglas and ShivWorks and brought that into the back of the ambulance, right? And that was huge. Right? Me and my partner Andre Thompson, my training partner, he did EWO before I ever was able to get into ECQC even, right? And so we started working a lot of that, but building with using some of the stuff that we stand on shoulders and giants, right? I pulled stuff from ShivWorks. We use Spear, right, as that weathering that initial violent storm, And then we have Gracie survival tactics. We do the level 1 because level 2 is more 2-on-1 and it's a lot of cuffing and stuff like that. The level 1 is perfect for what we have and what we teach, right? Although I'm going to try to transition that into something else with John Burke with Next Level Combatives. He has this program called P4, which is a whole other conversation. But
phenomenal episode. I just want to interject.
I love that guy. I like the
episode.
GST, and we'll still use some of the GST stuff because it's all part of the Gracie Combatives, right? And for that matter, right? Once, unlike police departments, once they say these are the tactics that we use, that's the ones that they have to stick with, right? So they have to research that. Now we research our spear instructors every 2 years. That's coming up in October. So we've got 5 spear instructors and we've got 3 GST instructors, right? So we can still teach jiu-jitsu, right? Because I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. Our other main point of contact for the DT stuff for the department is Will Adams. He's a Paragon black belt, super solid jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah. And our other guy is a Krav black belt, right? So because we do bring a little bit of striking, but we always make the point of like, hey, this is what you use when this person has gone from a patient to an assailant, right? Where it's like it's you or them, right? And you need something other, because let's be honest, jiu-jitsu is a practice sport, right? You have, drillers or killers, you have to rep that. And one day on the mats is not going to get you what you need to effectively, but it gives you an idea of what you can do, right? And it does give you some things if you could just remember like how to get somebody if they're mounted on you, how to control them a little bit. But everybody knows theoretically how to punch, right? But we kind of give them a little bit of that. But the program that we built, I think it's fucking incredible, to be honest with you. And I'm surprised that more people aren't asking. I have people ask me about it and they're like, well, I don't know, or they'll get in touch with me. I've had probably 13, 14 departments get in touch with me and they're like, we'll get back with you, or they're interested, but then they never follow up. And I'm like, we're doing something that nobody else is doing. Now, I will say, my friend Brian Collins in Lancaster, South Carolina, he's the training coordinator for Lancaster County EMS. He is bringing spear into there, and he's a BJJ purple belt. So he's trying to bring some more of that in, right? Because we're seeing the need more and more for medical providers. But I'm getting off on a tangent, but it was really nice to segue into that, the defensive tactic stuff, to pour myself into that. I got on as a member of the board of directors for the union. Because I want to push my agenda of the safety aspects of it, right, and make that a stronger thing. But just again, to give back to a profession that's given so much to me, it's absolutely incredible how much EMS has given. As much as I complain about it, because there's a friend of mine once said, there's 2 things paramedics hate the most: when things change and when things stay the same. And it's so true, right? Because as much as I complain about it, the profession of EMS has been incredible to me. So.
Well, I just kind of want to make a fine point of this for our listeners. I'll be honest, even as a person that's highly into understanding security and self-defense for the individual, the family, I don't think people think about the fact that you guys in ambulances responding to God knows what kind of incident you guys would really have. You're in a high risk situation, just like maybe not as much as police officers, but maybe the same. I don't know. But the thing is, we got to put a fine point on it that people don't think about the danger that you guys are in dealing with patients that even normal people cannot, can be in a state of shock, et cetera. And they may not deserve to be put down, but you may have to put them down, et cetera. Can you touch on that?
Who can I?
well, at least what I mean is, touch on the fact that it's a more dangerous job for your security and for your teammates.
It absolutely is. And from a number of reasons. Like one of the things too is like we as medic, we're sort of a person of authority, right? In a way, but we have no authority per se, right? I can't take someone against their will. That which is another conversation we can get into. But I can't make someone go to the hospital, right? If they can't show present mental capacity, if they're not alert and oriented, I can treat them and take them, right? But I can't make people go to the hospital, you know. So I have no real authority. I only have the ability to talk them into going, right. And we don't carry we don't carry sidearms. We don't carry, any sort of weapon. I mean, obviously I always carry a blade on me. I've always got a knife, but I mean, it's not really for stabbing people. It's for like, cutting something if I need to, right? But I mean, granted, I have a little bit of a different skill set than probably a lot of medics, or some anyway. But it is, and it's gotten more dangerous. One of the things that I talk about in I give this big, I get sadly only 2 hours to kind of go over situational awareness and, baselines, anomalies, and some of the things that we see as medics to our cadets when they come in. And one of the things I talk about is improvised weapons. And I think I've got like 10 or 12 pictures, and there's actually a collection of those at our Medic 6 downtown Austin of stuff we pulled off of homeless folks, right? It's screwdrivers, it's rocks in a sock, it's all kinds of weaponry, because there's a lot of homeless on homeless crime, right? Because it's like Mad Max is how I always describe it. But one of the things that I always really harp on is, I think it was a 2018 statistic from Department of Labor, was 52% of all workplace violence was with medical providers. And that includes law enforcement, right? So that goes vastly underreported, because most people's like, well, somebody took a swing at me. They don't, it's part of the job, right? Well, it's not, first and foremost, right? But they're, and it's becoming more and more pervasive, to be honest, right? You're seeing more and more medics getting shot, getting stabbed, getting attacked, getting assaulted, especially in the back of the ambulance, right? So it's more pervasive than, and a lot of times we go on what's called unknowns, right? So somebody will say, oh, I saw, or somebody will call and hang up, right? So in Austin, we'll send an ambulance to that before we'll send law enforcement, which is weird to me. Or somebody will say, oh, I saw, I choose your own adventure. I saw a guy sleeping on a bench, right? All right, so they'll send an ambulance. They won't send law enforcement. And maybe if law enforcement's available, they'll pick up the call. But ambulances go on that here. We go on a lot of stuff that I feel like it would be better if an engine crew went on, because you got 4 guys, right? Or law enforcement goes on because they have the ability to enforce the law, right? So, and there are a lot of calls where we'll stage and wait for law enforcement. If we get some information in the call text, we'll call and say, hey, we're staging for law enforcement. Let them get on scene first and let them look into it. But we go into situations all the time, right, where I'm like, oh, this is hinky. This looks a little hinky. Where's my roots of egress out of this room, And or just as a matter of point, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Austin, but downtown on the weekends, so they block off 6th Street, and it's just people everywhere. So if you run a call on 6th Street, you have to like move super slow with the ambulance through the crowds, and people are just all around the vehicle. So usually when we get out, if we're outside the vehicle, like outside, not in a house, like one person treats a patient, the other person's got the computer for doing our electronic patient care record, and you're getting information. If you're the treating medic, I'm Overwatch. I'm thinking of it from more of a security point of view. I'm looking around because, we've had medics, just get hit from behind. So we'll just walk by and just pop them in the head and just keep walking. And it's just a crowd of people. You don't know who it was. You don't know what happened. People get shoved, people get pushed, right? And I'm like, I want to get them in the back of that truck and lock the doors in that safe environment, in my workflow environment. But yeah, the amount of, and interestingly enough, in the last 2 years since COVID, assaults have gone up on medical providers. Assaults have greatly gone up on just people on people. And overdoses have gone up exponentially. It's amazing how many overdoses and assaults I run now compared to pre-COVID. It blows my mind.
Well, Walt, there are a couple of things that I wanted to hit on from some of the things that you stated, and I'll just hit with that real quick. Yeah. It's amazing to me that we are dealing with the high crime. However, we know the causation of a lot of that is the lack of enforcing the law and prosecution of violent crime, the vilification of law enforcement. It is not surprising to me that it would spill over into your profession.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. And the other thing that you said that I keyed in on as well, it's interesting in both law enforcement and your field. And again, I say this from a non-law enforcement and a non-EMS, but it's also applicable in what we do as trainers ourselves. This microcosm of society that even in these first responder population how little they really want to do the right thing regarding training. Mm-hmm. You know, it's so you know, the way you're describing it, your program sounds amazing. First off,
yeah, I appreciate it, man. I'm super proud of it.
It reminds me of Rich Daniels running essentially ECQC in the Oregon State Police, or maybe it's the Troopers. I may have that wrong, but I think that's one of the only academies that I'm aware of that does anything remotely close to ECQC. But that's what it reminds me of, and it's like, it's amazing to me that more departments don't do both what Rich Daniels is doing for law enforcement academies and what EMS academies are doing what you're doing. You want to hit on that?
Yeah, man. It's, you know, it's traditionally, I think some of the difficulty, or what I ran into initially, was kind of that old guard is like, well, what we have is fine. And, you know, so I had to go about disproving that, you know, with with wrist locks and some of that stuff. And I'm like, hey, look, you know, and it was kind of Wild West because you kind of did whatever, right? EMS departments, like any municipality, is a bureaucracy, and in most EMS systems, we actually have a assault reporting system now, which I think is huge, right? Because you actually, if you get assaulted, you can report that. You know, they sort of dissect it, and they look at it. And so what I do with when I hear about someone getting assaulted is I want to reverse engineer that, because if it happened to one medic, it's going to happen to another, right? But to your point, I think that a lot of EMS systems either just want to ignore it and just go like, well, it's part of the job, or like nothing's really happened yet. That's a big one. Like, well, nobody's really gotten hurt. You know, and I'm like, well, you know, we've had some serious injuries. We've had some really serious injuries, right? And so that being said, it makes it so much better, especially when we've had such great feedback from cadets. Like, oh, I use this. I had a guy just recently. He's like, hey, man, I totally used spear on this guy. He was trying to get in the ambulance. He was just trying to get in the truck, and he speared him, and I was like, oh, that's amazing, right? We've had a guy who used a carotid neck restraint, which, oddly enough, we'll talk about that in a second, because that's kind of a bee in my bonnet, so to speak, right? Because we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. But to your point, though, you know, like there does need to be more training, right? Because, and I just talked to, I just talked to Guy Schnitzler, right? I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to it yet. Incredible. You guys know he's amazing.
The first 30 minutes. Yeah, he's awesome, man.
But I also
love that episode.
Yeah, but I also talked to a guy who's an urban combatives guy, you know, Lee Morrison in the Netherlands, and I start to see the same things. I hear it from Craig. I hear it from my friend Patrick Odell, right? It's like the more trained you are, the more you understand the concepts, right? The less likely you are to be in a fight, right? So the more trained you are, the more you have a knowledge of what you can do when you need to, and you have some sort of like schema, or again, a context, be able to control somebody or do certain things where you've pressure tested them. You're like, okay, this works. Because I don't do anything that we don't pressure test with the cadets. I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to try to come off the stretcher, and you're going to use a technique we showed you, right? And you see if you can keep me down. I'm going to try. Right. And they're like, wow, this really works. Right. And that's the thing. And you guys know, you've had that light bulb moment, I'm sure, where you're like, oh my God. Right. You know, and how often do I say, look, you know, especially with the spear stuff, look, fix your feet, fix your hips, push away danger. Right. And even if you want to just want to disengage from somebody, right? Because that's one big thing we harp on too, is like, you don't have to get into a scrap with somebody. You know, here's the tools to disengage with them, push away danger, always choose safety. And those are the things we harp on. I think a lot of departments are afraid to even go down that route in a lot of ways, because they're like, well, we don't want to teach them to fight because they're going to fight more. And I'm like, and I hear that even now. And I'm like, you know, people aren't fighting more, but patients are becoming more aggressive and assault more. You know, we have a large homeless population here, right? And a lot of that comes from those patients, or people who are drunk, right? Or people who are polypharma overdose, like, you know, multiple drug overdose. Right. Or we just have people who are naturally aggressive folks. Right. So the training does need to be there, and it does need to be something that, like, I always look at it as like a living, breathing thing. And the biggest thing I harp on is all that left of bang thought process beforehand. Like, hey, because I've incorporated MUC, the Managing Unknown Contacts, into that whole, I get 2 hours, like I said, right before we do 6 hours on the mats. But like, I'm like, hey, look, the ninja sprinkle, the Jedi mind trick is seeing these things beforehand and understanding the pre-contact indicators and knowing, okay, this is probably going to go sideways. How do I get ahead of this? Do I call PD? Do I call that fire crew back? Because, you know, and I say it all the time. Most bad guys, they don't want it when PD's on scene, or when you got a four-man fire crew with you and your partner. They want to wait till you get in the back with just you and them, and then they want to try that element of surprise, right? They want to try to come off that stretcher. So again, to your point, man, it needs to be more. I don't know why more departments aren't going, hey, like what? Because I tell, like, call me. I will give you all the techniques we've come up with for the back of the ambulance. I'll give them to you for free. I won't charge you a penny. I'll show them to you. If you're not far away, I'll drive and show it to you. I'll teach you whatever you want to know. Right now, after I retire, I'm going to charge people for that. Right. Because I feel like we've built a very robust program, right? And once we add in John Burke's P4, it's going to be an incredibly well-rounded program, because he has a lot of the pre-contact indicators and a lot of de-escalation as well. Because that's the ninja sprinkle. That's the Jedi mind trick. Is you win 100% of the fights you don't get in, right? That's what we really, really try to push. And I wish more EMS systems would see that. But to one more point on that, one of the things that because I kept trying to sell it to our department, right? And I didn't get pushback, but I got indifference, right? The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And like, well, I don't know. I don't know where that sticking point was, but I talked to my spear instructor, Chief James Pearson, incredible guy, incredible mentor of mine. He's the retired police chief of Henderson, Texas. And one of those guys that's just absolutely, but he speaks admin, but incredibly smart guy, he's that guy that has tried a little bit of everything. He still believes in fitness. He still believes in staying in shape. I don't even know it. I think he's in his 60s now. Looks great, sharp as a tack. Still, he loves to train jiu-jitsu. He loves to train Krav. He loves to train karate. He loves to box. He loves to lift. He just, incredible guy. But one of the things he told me was actually incredible, and it actually was what really helped me push that program through, aside from help my union president, which is absolutely amazing, is he said, you know what, you got to sell them what they want to buy, not what you want to sell them. You got to hit on these safety things. You got to hit on the medical stuff from SPEAR and GST, right? How it's been medically vetted, how it's been legally vetted. You got to speak adminese to them. And that's really what helped me sell the program to the department.
Well, that's awesome. And to me, it sounds to me like, yeah, you hit it on the head. I'll show you for free now. Kind of reminded me of what Cliff has been preaching. But then, hey, once I retire, it's going on the program. It's going on the website, and you're gonna have to pay now. That's awesome, Walt. Aaron, you got anything to add to that?
I was just thinking about a couple of things, and I wanted to kind of go back to something that you said, that somebody who you were talking to, someone in administration or something, that, we don't want to train for violence. As it's amazing to me that people think that if you train for violence, it's like inviting violence. Well, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever. How stupid!
It's the antithesis of
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, it's proven time and time again that individuals that learn these types of techniques and train in these methodologies, that train on the mats, they deal with pressure, they go through these scenarios, they are way, way less likely to engage in any aggression or violence themselves.
It also reminds me
amazing.
Of that person on Facebook that you have to explain to them what the world is really like, and why do you carry a gun? I don't want to live in a world where I feel like I have to carry a gun everywhere. I go, dude, you do. You already live there.
You're living in that world.
You live in that world. You just want to act as if it doesn't exist, and then you feel better, buddy. You go ahead and feel better until your 40% day comes up.
Well, and Aaron, what are they going to do? They're going to go, why is this happening to me? Why are they doing this to me? When we know that means nothing at the time. Why it's happening, why they're doing that to you means nothing. And because you prepared your mindset to think that way, that's why you may very well lose this fight or worse.
Yeah.
But and it also comes back to it's we, the three of us, and anyone we have on this show, for some reason, something switched in us, and it happened to me about 8 years ago, maybe 7.5, 8 years ago. Eric remembers it. It just switches on where it's like, okay, wait, I have to be my own protector, my family's protector, and there's some serious things that I need to address. And all of a sudden, that makes me driven to address those things. But then every single one of us, like, I'll hand out, even though I get paid to teach people to shoot, I also will invite all kinds of people that I know, hey, I'll teach you how to shoot on the weekend, just freaking show up.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them will. None of them will. Every now and then you'll finally get one or two of those people. That's actually, I have some executives that were talking to me about pistol lessons, and I thought, I'll do these guys a solid and tell them I won't even charge them anything. But then I thought back, no, man, I'll make it official if these guys want to do this. I'll cut them a deal, but I'm not doing it for free because you know what? When you charge for something, people for some reason get more committed to it. Am I wrong in that, guys?
They value it more. No, you're absolutely right on that, man.
When
I was doing, when I spent like almost $12,000, and when I got this, I'm going to get everybody fit. I start proselytizing. I spent almost $12,000 on nutrition certifications, strength and conditioning certifications. This whole big idea, I was going to create this job for myself in EMS where I'm going to be like, I'll work shifts part time, and then I'll be like, I talked to the department buying a little bit of equipment. I'm going to drive around with this trailer that the department was going to buy me, and like help people work out and like write programming for them. But I have a lot of people like, hey, can you write me a program? Like, hey, can you write me a program? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm writing these programs and stuff, and it's interesting because like the same people come back to me. It's like, hey, you write me a program. I'm like, did you do the one I gave you last week? I'm like, well, I don't know, it's a little different. I mean, let me get something different. I need something. I'm doing this now. I'm like, all right. Right. I noticed once I started charging people for that, right, the people who I charged, one, valued it more, and they were committed to do it, right? It became important to them, right? And they took it more as like, then I was coaching them, right? They would call me like, hey, because I'm like, hey, look, you're paying me for this. So if you're going to hit a wall, it's going to start out great, but you're going to hit a wall. Let me know because that's what I do. I help you get past those sticking points, right? And so you're absolutely spot on, man. When I was giving things away, and even now, like I had to be careful with the DT stuff that I've come up with, because like if someone hits me up, from a different department, I just had some guy hit me up just recently. So I wrote an article for EMS World magazine or EMS One or both. I'm trying to remember about the program. And I've had people, and I've had people like, oh, hey, release your program. I'm like, all right, great. Well, here's my number. It's hard to explain over email or text. Give me a call. I'd love to explain to you what we do. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way I can. And they never call back, right? So I'm not gonna continue to. I'm not gonna follow up on those, because if they want it, they'll come get it, right? I mean, that's how I look at it now. And initially I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna call this department back or that department back. And initially, it's a couple departments I hit back up that were local, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna get to it. And I'm like, all right. So now I'm like, all right, well, and at this point now, like I'm already starting to. Not the physical, not the spirit and GST part, but the situational awareness, the security minded stuff. I'm already starting to be able to sell that to standalone ERs. I just did 2 ERs in Houston. There's a company called Ally Medical, absolutely phenomenal standalone ER hospital owned by a doctor's group, and they recognized early, and I give them props for this because they've already instituted a lot of security measures that I think are amazing. And they just had me come in and talk to them. We did muck. Talk to them about, situational awareness, talk to them about baselines and anomalies, give them a schema or a rubric, right? And it's incredible because a lot of these, they're like, hey, I'm like, tell me your stories. What's happened, right? Your workflow environment better than I do. And they're like, oh, we had this, drive-by shooting. They dropped this guy out in front. I'm like, oh, all right. And it was one that had, somebody with a shotgun show up at the door, So these things are happening, especially with like standalone ERs, because they don't have full-time security and they're not part of a big hospital with a ton of people. Right. So it's really interesting to see how all this is sort of morphing. But now I'm getting on a rather rabbit hole. But to your point, when you start giving something away, right, I don't think people value it nearly as much as when they purchase it. And I think too, I think it says, because I've been guilty of it too. It's like, well, because like I'll lowball it, right? Because I'm like, well, I like this person. I'll give them, a little bit cheaper, right? But now by the same token, I have given some stuff away. Like I'll say, hey, I want to do a women's self-defense class in my neighborhood or whatever, because I want to hone something, or I want to hone a teaching principle, something like that, right? And it's a good way to get a free audience if somebody shows up, and then maybe if they want to buy something later on. Usually I'm not even selling them anything. I'm just like, hey, I'm doing this free class kind of thing. But it's because I want to hone something for what I'm doing that eventually I will get paid for. So.
Yeah.
Well, if I can add to that, Walt, because you guys describing that made me think of what I just dealt with this last week. And again, following the lead of our mentors, running beta testing of curriculum changes, which is one of the things that I've been doing recently is looking at changes in our 8-hour curriculum. And I decided to run 2 betas, right? I ran one, and then just this last week ran another one, because the AAR comments that I got from the previous one, I wanted to change and put it in the curriculum and write in the POI. And I wanted to vet it again before Aaron and I went live with this curriculum. Man, I offered it to all kinds of people, and I had multiple commitments. And I'm going to tell 2 stories about this. So I had all these commitments, and then half of them dropped off. And I could tell it wasn't just because they had anything going on. It's just when they started facing having to be out with some peers. And one individual, and I'm not going to even describe the person because they may listen to our show, but it's like this individual told me, "Oh, I had all the classes I needed in the Army," and I'm amazed.
You didn't.
Dunning-Kruger poster, Dunning-Kruger poster child. And I had another friend or colleague say, "Man, you don't know what you're missing out. I've taken that beta class." I mean, and Eric's offering this for free just so you can help vet the curriculum. And he was totally silent. It's amazing to me. You give something for free, but then people's ego starts talking. And then, but my point behind all this is we ran through the beta this last weekend, and those that attended came back to work for some of the individuals I offered it to, and they're like, "Man, it was awesome. You guys missed out. Why weren't you there?" And they're like, this look on their it's hilarious. And the point is what you just said. It's like you can offer something for free that's of in my opinion, even though it's our curriculum, of value. We hit that Dunning-Kruger effect, and this whole 1 percentile of people that either carry or excuse me, pardon me, I'm Freudian slip. Folks that carry a gun or have qualified to carry a gun, and they don't train at all.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
go ahead, Aaron.
had an epiphany just now. Are the only people that show up to these great classes people that don't really have ego issues? I'm asking a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be somebody that shows up with an ego,
but
right?
it's rare though.
It really is. It really is.
Like
usually you get like the group.
And again, in these great classes, there's people with egos, but I think in these great classes that we all take, I bet you, man, it's 80% that are. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I don't have a problem with ego, man. I just never have. I just want to show up and I just wanted to show up and learn And yeah, I'll still probably be embarrassed a little bit, but I don't care. So
Yeah.
is it that the 80%, but because we've got to fill these great courses with some people, and man, it just occurred to me we're the type of people that show up in that 80%, I think, and man, no matter how many times I tell people when I know it's their ego or they're embarrassed to show up, I say, man,
Yep.
I promise you, buddy, please listen to me. I don't care how you shoot. I don't care if you hit the target. I will love for you just to show up,
Yep.
and, still I have people that I had to tell that before still not show up when I know they could have, but we're kind of going off on that, but it's just, we're talking about military training. We're talking about civilian training. We're talking about, which is fascinating to me, that there's this side of the EMS world where, like where there's serious training going on to help keep your profession safe while you're doing your job too. Just interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't change, does it? Well, training is training, no matter where it is. It's still the same egos and such to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And likely the same rough percentages of people that self-select in and the rough percentage of those that will always self-select out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Walt, I'm going to nerd out here for a second because you're an EMS and you have all this experience. I'm curious, and this is telling on myself. My highest level of medical training is TCCC, Combat Lifesaver. My intent, and I've said this on the air, I think after some of my goals, my purple belt goal that I'm working on right now, and some shooting goals, I think after that, I'm probably going to double down on my medical training. I'm curious your thoughts on, number one, what you think of the TCCC, and does it mix in with your EMS?
Yes.
And then number two, how have you yourself experienced having to tourniquet many individuals? So those two questions, the TCCC, your thoughts on it and how it mixes in with your guys' programs, and also, is that something that you've individually had to do? Is tourniquet individuals?
Yes, man. And I'll tell you, that's a great question on a couple of levels, right? First and foremost, TCCC has honestly revolutionized EMS trauma care, right? It has been driven by, because TCCC's birth was the Black Hawk Down incident, right? That was pretty much the genesis that really started the whole TCCC. And then you had like Ranger medics using ratchet straps as tourniquets before tourniquets were tourniquets. Because you got to think, before that, you got taught from EMT to EMT intermediate to paramedic, never put a tourniquet on somebody. Their limb will fall off. The world comes to an end. Up is down, black is white. You never put a tourniquet on unless it's just life and death. And I'm like, and so we learned so much from battlefield casualty care, right? And even from like extended casualty care, right? A lot of the 18 Delta stuff, a lot of the guys who went through SOCM, so much of that translated over to some of these long distance, like there's some rural EMS systems that transport critical care patients, right? So a lot of that has translated well. But for us, the big ones, the biggest ones are tourniquets and wound packing. Right, those are the two big things that translated over, because we have, like, we carry blood now. Our system carries blood. Not all EMS systems carry blood, right? But and we have some pretty advanced protocols, right? And we're lucky. Our assistant medical director is a SF doc, right? So that helps. But it really pushed EMS's trauma care to a whole other level, because before it was just like, pressure bandages, and you didn't even think about a tourniquet until the advent of TCCC, and military really, has really driven trauma care within EMS. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and then what 18 deltas, that's, I mean, that's basically, you're basically a PA then, right? Physician's assistant. You're prescribing drugs, you're like running labs, stuff like that, stuff that we don't do, or I don't do within my scope. So there are paramedics that do that, right? Within my scope, I'm just field operations. I'm on an ambulance, right? I don't do critical care transport, but I mean, and I've probably tourniqueted somebody 5 or 6 times. I've done a ton of wound packing, right? Because sometimes it's just not tourniquet worthy, but it's wound. Now I will say on the other side of that, there are a lot of people who have tourniquets, law enforcement, who like to throw them on because somebody's got a little bleed going, right? And I'm like, hey man, let's pull that tourniquet off. You need to save that, my friend. Just because, but by the same token, like I give them the business about it, but by the same token, they probably get an hour. If that, on a tourniquet. Hey, here's how you put it on. High and tight, pull it tight, twist the windlass. Okay, good to go. And they probably don't call it windlass. They go twist the knob, or I don't know, whatever. Right? They get very little training on it. Yeah, twist the stick. Right? So they probably get very little training on it, and they're like, all right, we're good to go. I mean, and unfortunately, so much of public safety is they want to check a box, right? I've been asked to teach some of the stuff that we teach they want us to teach parks, and the parks guys wanted the spear stuff and the situational awareness stuff. And they're like, hey, can you do a train the trainer in 2 hours? I'm like, no, I can't. I can give you situational awareness in 2 hours and you'll have a vague working knowledge of it. But I need at least 4 hours, and it's not going to be a train the trainer, right? It's not going to, that being said, right, it's difficult because a lot of people who aren't EMS just get some like cursory, like, hey, throw the tourniquet on. So I see a lot of poor tourniquet application, or I see a lot of loosey-goosey tourniquet application, But for me personally, when I've needed a tourniquet, it's been great to have, because I've had some pretty nasty, and oddly enough, not gunshot wounds, not ballistic wounds or knives. It's been some other weird accident. It's been 2 have been chainsaws. 2 have been circular saws with the guard tied back, using it as a chainsaw on a limb, because why wouldn't you?
Oh, wow.
Right. Oh, I see the circular saw with the guard tied back a lot, right? One was really interesting. This guy, yeah, those like he was at a bus stop, and have like like this big industrial like the screw and the like a threaded screw, and they have a big bolt that goes on there, and they tighten it, holds like light poles on and that kind of thing. But you can imagine, right? But super rough edges. He fell against that and just shredded that brachial artery in his arm. He just fell back against it. And I was like, oh, he looked, I've never seen anybody that pale green color, even with no light. And I'm like, oh, we got to get tourniquet on that. I'm like, hey man, this is going to hurt. Right. But just, it's now I've put some chest seals on. I've done some wound packing for knife wounds and for gunshot wounds. But for tourniquets, it's been chainsaws, circular saws, and that bolt on a bus stop.
Yeah. So that brings up, okay, so wound packing. So I really need to up my personal game when it comes to what I carry with me, but I always carry a cat tourniquet, and I carry about, I don't have my pants on that I normally carry, but I've got some Celox Z gauze.
Yeah.
Now,
nice.
When you're saying you're packing wounds, are you using a hemostatic type gauze, or is good gauze, or can you elaborate on that? And
absolutely.
Two level question, and then tell us about what that's like packing a gun wound. So.
Yeah, it's not enjoyable for the person receiving the packing, but to your question, right? So the hemostatic gauze is great. A lot of times it's cost prohibitive for people. It's fun if you go buy a little bit of it, but if you're an EMS system, so a lot of times we just use regular gauze. Now, again, I'm a nerd, right? So I carry my own Elias dressing, which we can talk about here in a second, right? Which has gauze and a pressure dressing all in one. It has a little plastic cup on top that adds pressure. So I have a couple of those. But so as an EMS system, the rescue guy, the rescue team, and the tactical team does have the hemostatic gauze, the Z gauze. But as far as like system wide, we use really good technique, and we use just the Kerlix gauze, right? The rolled gauze. And we get some pretty solid training on that. Again, our assistant medical director, J.R. Pickett, he's an SF doc, super high speed guy, judo black belt, right? He's a super solid guy. Yeah. And he gets it, right? He's, and so our TCCC stuff, our trauma care is pretty solid. We're doing chest thoracostomies too. Like, make an incision in the chest. So now it depends. That's a kind of a protocol thing. We'll go into that a little bit later. But to your point, though, the wound packing is huge, right? And done well and done right. That's one of the things I teach my trauma med courses through either Apostles Firearms Academy or Texas Trauma Tactical Institute. When I teach for those guys, I really try to. So we usually get like a pork loin or something. We shoot it because we also talk a little bit about the ballistics, right? Because you can see the entry and exit wounds.
Awesome.
We can talk about stippling. We could talk about a little bit of the ballistic dynamics. But then, too, one of the things that's really nice because it's almost like a live tissue lab. So when you're packing that wound, because the insult to that tissue, it starts to spread out. So you can see as you pack it, that tissue spreads out like real tissue does. Right, but one of the things I always emphasize too, like to your point of packing a wound, is like when you're packing a wound, we had one guy who he'd been shot several times with an AR, right, through a truck, oddly enough, over a parking space, which is really interesting. But driver dead, this is a passenger, right? I put 2 chest seals on him, and I'm packing this wound on his leg, right? But I'm trying to find the bleed because it's just pouring out. So usually use this finger sweep method where you're trying to see where the bleed is actually coming from, and you'll wad up the gauze and you'll put the pressure on that spot that's bleeding, and you start packing. So you just switch off. You can see that you switch off as you keep that pressure on that spot. So this guy's still alert, and he knows what's happening, right? And the tough thing was like Spanish speaking only, and my Spanish is horrendous, right? I know how to say, give me many kisses. Do you need to vomit and breathe deeply? And I like you. I think those are solid. That's the extent of my Spanish, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to get one of the fire guys who speak. I'm like, hey, tell him this is going to hurt, And so I start digging in this wound. I'm looking because I'm trying to find that because it's very subtle. It's nuanced where you try to find that bleeding spot, right? And so I'm able to find it. He's just screaming. I'm like, hold him down, right? We start packing it, right? And it's amazing too how much gauze you could put in a wound. It's it's crazy to think how much gauze you can just stick in there, right? And then too, you want to pack it correctly, right? Because you got to keep that pressure on. But hemostatic gauze is great. Right, that's awesome. I mean, it's definitely better than the old powder style used to pour in there, like get burned like hell. Nobody liked that. But the hemostatic gauze is phenomenal, right? I mean, it's cost prohibitive for EMS systems as a whole, so it's easier to go with Kerlex and good solid techniques.
So good accountants that can carry a gun and afford Z-locks or C-locks, I'm good to go because I don't have to supply to my whole crew.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to tell a little story. I can't remember the last time that I've paid for any trauma medical gear, and so if any folks are out there that go down range and run caches, you didn't hear this, but so that's how I try to keep up with stock on my bags and everything. So when I go down range and deploy, it's fairly easy to play the civilian that, hey man, I got my IFAC kit here and they didn't fill my IFAC with, hey, can you give me some gear?
Yes.
I'm telling you, I've
liberating some equipment.
And then Eric dumps that in his quarters, and then he goes back out like he's a kid on Halloween.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, I'm sitting here like right now. This is one of the combat gauze that I have in one of my chest seals that I just pulled out of my pocket. That I got at a cache in Iraq because I just go and ask those questions, and these medics are so willing to help. That's the point I was going to make. Is that I might be taking a little bit of advantage, but. It's also funny because I'll ask, hey, when's your guys' next combat lifesaver class? You want to come to the class? I said, yeah, heck yeah. And I show up, and these soldiers are looking at me like, what's this civilian doing in here? But my point is, man, it's like, it's been awesome being in the position where I can fill my my personal IFACs and bags if I just ask the question and they give it to me, man.
Yeah, that's
give me
huge.
all kinds of good stuff.
And so much great medical gear. I mean, you can go like North American Rescue has an Amazon store. You can get high fin chest seals. You can get Kerlex. You can get But you can get. I don't think you could get chest darts. I think that has to. I don't think you can do. Maybe shit. Oh, but what I do know is I can go up to.
Are you talking about for
for needle decompression,
pneumothorax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
I know I don't know if you can buy those or not. But I know I go up to Fort Sill and hit up any number of, because that's what I do. I go up to Killeen to Fort Sill. Shit, I wasn't talking about my first duty post. Go up to Killeen to Fort Hood, and because I'll go through tourniquets. They'll get messed up, or they'll get old, they'll get worn. So for the classes I teach, and I just like to have a shit ton of training tourniquets, right? And I do a lot of field expedient stuff, like you putting two cats together and using a helmet as a junctional tourniquet. Because a junctional tourniquet from Sam's like, I don't know, $350, $400 because it's green and it's cool, But yeah, I mean, I'll go up there and you can buy tourniquets super cheap, right? Troops, and they're mostly Gen 4s, Gen 5s, some Gen 1s still, but they're great for training, right? And they're great for
what are we at now? Gen 7 with
Gen
the
7s,
cats?
Yeah, Gen 7s with the cats.
Yeah. Those are well made. And on that subject, I'll ask you what your preference is. I know they have both the cat and the soft T wide. What's your favorite out of those two?
Yeah. You know what? Let's talk about the rats for a second. In a minute, right? Because I have a little bit different take on the rats than most people.
I'm trying to be a troll here. Sorry about
that.
No,
you're fine. You're fine. No, you're fine because it's a valid point too, right? So I like the soft T because I like the fact that it has the aluminum windlass and it has the metal buckles. I like that, right? And I mean, you can get soft T's pretty. I think I got two for $35-$40 the other day on Amazon. And but I mean, the cat's pretty much the gold standard, right? It's the soft T's is just I think is a little more hardened version, really. But I mean, those Gen 7 cat tourniquets are phenomenal. I'll see Austin Police all the time. They'll have like a Gen 1 with the white, and it's all shredded and beat up. And I'm like, hey man, listen, here's a tourniquet. Right. I go use that one for training, switch that shit out, And two, they'll have one of the things I try to talk to them is about staging that tourniquet, right? Because they'll have it like wrapped all the way over or they have it all the way over. And I'm like, if your fingers are wet with blood, gloves or no gloves, you're not going to be able to get that, especially if you have it covered all the way over, trying to get that with blood on your fingers, right? Because blood is so viscous anyway, and trying to get that Velcro, especially under stress when you really need a tourniquet. It's, so I show them how to stage it. I'm like, hey,
set that loop up already and fold it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool. But, shit, where's I going with all that? But,
well, and Walt, my preference of the soft T wide, part of that is how you can flat fold them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prep them and flat fold them. I like that a lot. Yeah. I will tell you, they're a little harder to apply to the shoulder, but I think I've been solving that through a little better training with my dry firing.
That's huge though, because so many people what was the one kid that Rittenhouse shot, like he had a tourniquet but he didn't know how to use it. I'm like, so many people have tourniquets, right? Well, two, whenever I do this stuff with Texas Tactical, we run them through a little force-on-force scenario, right? So, so you're getting hit with sim rounds, right? And you're like, all right, left arm, and so they're trying to address the threat, and suddenly you see some of the worst tourniquet application when your heart rate goes up. You got that pain penalty of a sim round going to come flying in at any moment, right? So it's pretty interesting to watch that. But something that is interesting about the rats, right? So I'm going to get shit about this because I always do. And I always talk about this, right? Is the rats the perfect tourniquet? No, right? Is it better than nothing? Yeah. But one of the things that I used a rat once that I had on me, and I had it on me for a specific reason. And I needed is this little old lady who was maybe 90 pounds soaking wet, teeny tiny little arms. And she was using this giant butcher knife to open an Amazon package and sliced right across, right in that brachial artery. And it was just, she was already like, her blood pressure is probably 90/60 every day, right? And she's just like pale. She's cool. She's almost incoherent. And I could not get that. Her arm was so tiny. I could not get that cat to seat and get a good seal on that, it won't compress the artery. So I was like, fuck, let me try this rats, right? And it was something until I could pack that wound, right? And fortunately, she was pretty close to our trauma hospital, right? But it was something that I could use that would actually fit her teeny tiny little arm, because I could not get that cat to go around this little itty bitty arm. I mean, this lady was maybe 5 feet if she was a foot, right? And she was just tiny all over, right? Just was little, little old lady. This knife was as big as she was, because she had it in her hand. I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? And she's got the package. She's bleeding all over that. And she's got the knife in her hand, and she's just kind of confused. I'm like, let's get that knife first. Let's put that away.
Well, man,
but to that point, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I can think about it. I've got rats sure look cool, and they're smaller, and again, like you said, a rat's is going to be better than trying to grab a stick and a t-shirt, and probably even better. But is the main problem with them? Is it nerve shearing? Is that really the only complaint that's the possibility of it, or?
Can I add one thing? Yeah. Just my experience with it, and Walt, I'll let you answer with your thoughts on it. I'll tell you my problem with the rat's tourniquet is my legs are probably smaller than they used to be, but I used to have some big squat legs, and the rat's tourniquet for me individually was not long enough to occlude if I needed to occlude
I could see that
a amputation. It just was not long enough.
Yeah.
And that was my problem with it. But again, it could be from an uneducated
now that's a completely valid
anecdotal
point.
Yeah. So, but your thoughts on it? Walt, go
ahead.
Man,
that's a completely valid point, right? Because is it the optimum tourniquet that I would want? No. The only reason I have one in my kit is for like some little kid that I can't get a cat to be able to clamp down. It won't compress that artery against the bone which is what a tourniquet does, right? Or that little old lady that was just teeny tiny, right? I mean, and the odds of me needing that, I'll probably never need one ever again. Right. But it was nice to have it when I needed it. That's it's a specialty thing to me. Right. I know you talk to most people like, oh, fucking rats are the worst fucking thing. I'm like, everything I don't know. I look at it just like I look at how we look at fighting and violence. Right. Everything has a time and a place. It's the context.
That's what I was going to say, buddy.
Context.
Yep. And if I can add one more point to that is, you might have to add more than one tourniquet in a particular amputation, where one cat, two cat may not solve the problem.
Yep.
What happens if that's all the tourniquets you have, but you also have a rat, or you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
But what I think you made me think about that. I'm sitting there looking around. Yeah, I don't think it's here right now, but I've got at least 2 rats that I have.
I've still got some
that
hanging
makes
around.
me think a little different about it.
Yeah,
maybe
I carry,
I should
when I go
put it back in my kit.
When I go to the neighborhood pool. Just saying, when I go to the neighborhood pool, I bring a little tiny bag of a few things, which has some pepper spray in it, and I have a rat's tourniquet in there, just because it's smaller, and heck, if I need a tourniquet at the swimming pool, hey, it's gone real bad. Might as well use a rat's.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is too it is you can make all kinds of field expedient, like with a belt or whatever, right? But like the thing is, a rat's it has a purpose, right? It is. I mean, it's a tourniquet for all practical purposes. So it's going to be a lot easier than trying to figure out how to rig up a belt, right? And how to, because I mean, I was just thinking because I remember when my partner's former 2nd Battalion 75th Ranger, his wife was with him when they spoke, and she was like, yeah, it was really cool, with the well, not cool, but some of the things like people were using belts and shirts and stuff at the the Vegas shooting. And I'm like, well, leather is a hard thing. Like, you're going to have something pretty strong as a windlass to twist that. And then what are you going to get to hold it in place, right? Whereas if I've got a rat's, right, all right, it's got a purpose, it's got a way to application. And so that's why I teach it when I teach my tactical trauma stuff. I'm like, hey, and I give the spiel. It's like, look, sometimes you're going to pull out rats and people are going to lose their shit. And it's the worst thing ever. And how dare you? And I'm like, hey man, everything is all context, like, are you going to need this? It depends. Right. That's how I always look at it. It's like, I'd rather have it and not need it, or have it just in case for that one weird time that I needed it. Right. I mean, because
I would like to really add and make sure that I'm clear that I'm not an anti-rats person at all. I'm saying that for myself when I think about having it for a personal application.
Yeah, it's not the gold standard.
It wasn't going. It wasn't going to work for me in that instance. However, we're not dogmatic about, and especially about. I mean, that is not my.
Oh yeah. Oh, and again, that's one of the things that I love about you guys. Right? Is that's one of the things that I think drew me to the podcast initially, right? I said, iron sharpens iron, man. I love that you guys don't follow a dogma about. I would find it hard to believe you guys be dogmatic about anything. Well, except for maybe generally accepted accounting procedures, but
man, I'm going to start.
My freshman.
I'm going to start quoting FASB's, my man. You guys want? Let me get a whiteboard here.
That was my freshman accounting class, rearing its ugly head. We're going to talk about debits and credits, and
I'm going to give you guys. I'm going to give you guys a lesson in contract accounting, and not only contract accounting, but governmental contract accounting. No, man. That's awesome to hear. You would be surprised that we were dogmatic. I definitely find myself being a little dogmatic sometimes, and when I see it, I go, internal Aaron, stop that shit.
Yeah.
But I really was trolling on the rats thing, because I know that there's a stigma.
Oh, my friend, believe me. Yeah. Everybody, there's always some guy in class, who's like, well, I heard, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure, man. But I'm just saying, like, it's information. Take it as you want it, my friend.
But they're probably,
because I'm not married to
there's probably it's just like the people attacking me on the pistol forum for suggesting that a 380 is actually on the table again for self-defense. Boy, some of them just got on me, man.
Yeah, I saw some of that.
Yeah, and then you got people,
typical trolls, internet warriors, keyboard warriors.
And then on the other, and Eric, I want to talk about this on our next show when it's just us. But then guys, real good guys talking about 22s, and man, if you really look at things, man, there's, like you guys said, there's a mission that some gear's going to fit every kind of mission, not every kind of. You guys know what I'm saying. And
it's funny. Guy Schnitzler just talked about that, about like, you guys talking about like calibers. He's like, it's 22. He's like, all right, let me shoot you with it.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, well, all right then.
Well, yeah, and
I may not have the statistic correctly at all. I haven't talked on this point for a long time, but it's a pure numbers thing. There are more 22 long rifle, either pistols or rifles, in circulation in the United States than any other. Now that may be changing now, frankly, and you sit there and think through that. But for the longest time, there was at some point that 22 long rifle was the highest used caliber in deaths, and again,
pure numbers probably.
The internet may blow up,
but
exactly.
In other words, it was effective a lot of times, right?
Exactly. That's the point. It was effective a lot of times.
Yeah. I'm in the market for a 22 pistol, actually, for my little bug out bag,
dude.
Because you can carry so much.
That's a real good
so
point.
much. How many rounds can you carry? Well, I mean, they're still pricey, but how many? You can carry a lot more rounds. It's quick. It's easy. It's not super loud.
It got me thinking.
Small game hunting, and
I was just going to say this talk that I mean, it was a good podcast, actually. It got me thinking, man, maybe I should go and get, actually, it seems like the gold standard is the Ruger LCR. And I went out there and looked, and I was
can see that.
I can't. When I choose guns to buy, the currency is Glocks. How many Glocks can I get with that gun? Well, a Staccato that cost me 8 Glocks. The Langdon Tactical 92 that I want's going to cost me about 4 Glocks. But this LCR, man, is going to cost me a full Glock, and I'm thinking, man, I'll just get another Glock, But
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I think a 22's going to be cool to have in the arsenal. Yeah, especially when you got to go real minimal so I'm talking about
Well, and Aaron, if I could add one point to that, a practical point that we all have to think about. And I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm not nowhere close to this right now, but man, the freaking Complete Combatant with Cliff back in March, what was it, the 5th and 6th, Aaron? I don't remember.
Sounds right.
Man, I am this freaking index finger, my trigger finger is still jacked up from that class. And it's like I think about as we get older, and those of us that train in the gi a lot too. Minus our brethren across, being a 10th Planet guy, probably doesn't get in the gi very often. I'm just fucking with you, man.
You're good.
but man, it's these fingers start getting crickety a lot more than I would have expected, and I've heard. I've heard, man, why am I forgetting his name right now? The tactical professor. Man, give me, I'll remember I feel horrible. Claude Werner, goodness gracious. Claude Werner mentioned that one time where as you get older, a 22 may come in very handy when your fingers are all, you're arthritic and all of those things. So that's another thing to think
or even
about.
have what is it? The little AR-1? Is that what it is? A little breakdown. That little breakdown survival rifle. Is it AR-1? Is it AR-10? Yeah. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, and you have the old Henry rifle.
Oh,
too.
that'd be cool to have.
Yeah.
But just like 22s. That was my first rifle. Was a little 22 long rifle. My pops gave me. It was his when he was growing up.
Well, Walt, we're kind of getting long here, so but I didn't want to miss out on at least a couple of questions here. Let me ask 2 questions, and then let's start saying goodnight. But
all right.
So I used to go to a training group about every other Sunday. They would actually have it every Sunday, but there was this local FBI SWAT team member that would put on a training group. He just wanted everybody to come train, and
cool.
there was usually about 15 people out there. It was a good crowd. But every time we would start that, he would give a safety briefing, and I'll cut to the chase and say, EMT, they aren't going to come in here until all these weapons are secured, and they give the go ahead. It's going to be all this stuff, making it kind of scary that the ambulance and the paramedics aren't going to show up until they know every gun's gone off the range. How true is that?
That I have never heard that because we've run a couple calls at gun ranges, and usually if it's a gun range, every the range is already cold anyway, right? There's a indoor range here. I won't even say who it is, right? But there's been 2 suicides. Like somebody rent a gun, run a couple rounds, and then shoot themselves out on the range, right? So
I've heard about that. I've seen videos of it.
Yeah, it's horrible, right? And so, by the time you get there, the range is cold because it's gun guys, right? You're always going to follow those gun safety rules, So, yeah, I've never heard that,
Man, that's good to hear because I always thought, dude, that sounds like BS.
Yeah, I think that is BS. FBI though, man, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and it also might have been just a way to put the fear in everybody about being safe, and all that stuff.
Yeah, it could be.
But
yeah, I could see that.
So,
go
ahead.
It made me think of I saw a funny meme on Instagram. A friend of mine put it up, and it's like, I think it was Elon Musk offered I don't know, $100 million for the FBI, but Hillary Clinton wasn't selling or something. It just made me think of that meme. I was like, God damn it, that's funny.
That
But
is
it just made me
That's the damn
FBI. It
truth.
just made me laugh.
that's awesome.
And I mean, since you brought that up, man, it's amazing to me. Right now, we're seeing the what was the Sussman trial right now,
Yeah.
and how it's coming out in the open. That we knew this. Any of us that dig into the news and dig into the stories that Hillary was behind the whole damn thing, authorizing
Nothing will happen.
the
Still dossier
yeah,
stuff. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what was funny is when I saw all those stories releasing from that trial, all of a sudden the Rhino Republicans come out and start bashing Trump. They got to distract from the fact that, anyway, didn't mean to get off on that
You're
tangent.
fine. I think I led you down that path.
we live in a world where they should sell tickets. So
Yep. Well, Aaron, go ahead. You got a couple of questions for closing?
So and then one more. Can you tell us a good crazy call story where something really wild happened or really something dangerous? Or I mean, you've got to have a handful of stories to tell.
Yeah.
Let's get a good one.
Yeah, I'll tell you one first. Well, so let's see. I will tell you. Trying to pick and choose some of the best ones. So I'll tell you one that just blew my mind when I first got into EMS because of the anatomy of the injury, right? And then I'll tell you one to kind of round it out and bring it back home and give you a feel good.
Okay.
Right. So when I first got into EMS, this was back in North Carolina, and so you know how rural roads are back in North Carolina, little 2-lane roads. You know, they'll go down a hill, cross a bridge, a creek, and they'll go back up, and just out in the country. And these two guys were in this. It was like a little old Chrysler of some kind. And so when they came down the hill, they had both. They were drunker than skunks, right? Or as you say back in North Carolina, drunker than Cooter Brown, right? So they launch. Right. And the way they launched off this kind of like berm area, you couldn't really tell that there was a car. So they launch, they fly over, and they land. So you know how like a creek is shaped like that, right? So they land into the creek in that corner of the creek, the far side of the creek. So that happens, right? So, but nobody sees this. It's a country road. So next we get a call for some drunk guy wandering around, and his head's bleeding, and Spanish speaking only, right? And he's, he smells like alcohol. He's confused, and they don't know where he came from. We're like, all right. So we're looking around. We're trying to figure it out. So one of the guys, Spanish speaking. So he's in a car wreck. I'm like, all right, where? Right? Because you can't see where this car went off the road or anything. So he's like pointing in the creek, and we're like looking. You can't really see it, right? Until you kind of walk down the bridge and shine down, and it's probably about 50 meters down, just past where our flashlights could hit. So then you see the car, and you're like, oh shit, right? So we go down there, and here's the crazy thing, and here's where it gets creepy and weird, but fascinating to me because I just gotten my paramedic, right? So we get in down there, and so so the creek shaped like this, right? I know people can't see that, right? So the car launches, hits that. So when the driver, he flies forward because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so his head apparently had impacted somewhere here on the steering wheel. And when it did, and this is going to sound creepy as hell, his entire head exploded. So the only thing that was other than just there's gray matter, there's skull fragments, there's blood, there's all over the car. But the only
So he passed away.
Yes,
he didn't.
Right.
He didn't pull through.
Sorry.
And you could
That was a bad joke.
But you could only see the basilar skull floor, right? Because the brain had disconnected; it had disintegrated. So there was only like So from here, like imagine just the rest of your head is gone, like it just blew open, like an alien popped out of it.
Wow.
And this is the worst wreck I'd ever seen, right? And so it's all over. There's nothing we could do for the guy, obviously, right? But I've never seen anybody's basilar skull floor before, and the brainstem just broken, and it's just. And so we're going to get because there, it was we're doing recovery for the body and everything. We're pulling out, it's a crime scene and all that. So we're pulling and I'm sitting and I'm staring at it, right? Because it's like you're seeing human anatomy you shouldn't be seeing. And just the fact that, because that's what we had figured, is like he had to have hit his head, and just that the pressure had made his head explode, because what else would have done it, right? And so we're trying to figure this out, figure out how you reconstruct it. And I'm staring at it. I was like, Walsh, you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you sure? I'm like, have you ever seen anything like that in your fucking life? Right? I was mesmerized by it. And I wasn't creeped out so much by it, because I was fascinated by it, right? I mean, which sounds horrible, right? Because I mean, that's a shitty way to go. I mean, I'm sure it was instantaneous, but it blew my mind, right?
It blew your mind?
Yeah. God damn it. Touche, my friend. But yeah, it was absolutely crazy to me. And I remember just being fascinated by that. Now, I will tell you a story to bring it back around. Because when we were talking about kids earlier, it made me think about this. It was here in Austin, probably, I'm going to say 6-7 years ago. And we ran nice, well-to-do neighborhood. We ran a drowning. So now most drownings we run are either they're dead and we're doing a body recovery, or it wasn't really a drowning. They just went in the water for a second and they coughed a little bit, right? And then we sort of see. Now, by the same token, right, a lot of onset of when they start getting bad isn't for a little while, right? If they actually did get some water in their lungs, it doesn't start presenting a problem until an hour or so later. So some people who are, I'm fine.
Wow.
I didn't get any water in my lungs, right? And they start having issues. So this was a 3-year-old little girl, and she, everybody's out in the pool, like 2 sets of parents, bunch of kids, and she falls in and nobody notices. So her little brother, he was 5 or 6. He screams for his dad, and he dives in and he pulls her up from the bottom, right? And the dad grabs her, right? And we get there. So I get there like literally almost, because we were at a really close station to this. Is me and my old partner, Mark Hawkins, man. He just retired not long ago. And both of us have been medics I've been a paramedic for almost 30 years. He's probably been one for about 30 or 31 years at this point. And the little girl, she definitely got water in. I'm like, all right, get the fire guys. Look, we got to go. We're going to start working on this, that, and the other. We're getting our treatment plan together. I'm like, all right, let's get going. All right, one of your parents, whichever one's going, we're going now. Right. I got the little girl in my arms, but I got the story about this. Like, my son jumped in and he pulled her up, and this kid is like, he's standing there like, oh my God, what's going on? Right. And so we're doing everything. We get the girl. She ends up having a great outcome. But here's what I thought was amazing about this is this little boy. And I get emotional talking about it now, because I got emotional with the dad, because the dad was there at the hospital with the Dell Children's. Little girl ends up being fine, has a great recovery. But this little boy, her little brother, saved her life, right? And I remember seeing the dad. He's outside, and like, they're all around. They're doing everything right. They're putting her on what's called CPAP, right? Because they kind of breathe, getting that water, kind of helps get the water out, helps her breathe, right? Gets a deeper oxygen into the tissues. Because when you get the water in your lungs, you can't get that oxygen exchange, right, at the tissue level. So they're doing all the stuff, and the dad's like, because I can tell he is like, I didn't see my little girl fall in the water. And and he's like, is she going to be okay? And I'm like, she's going to be okay. Right? She's going to have a good outcome. And I was like, your son is amazing. God, I'm getting emotional talking about it. And he started crying. And then I started crying. And I was like, what? That little boy is a hero. That kid is amazing. And I was like, God damn it. He's 5 or 6. And he had the wherewithal to scream for his dad, dove in and pulled her up. It was a good 6 feet. It was 6 feet of water easily. Came up with her. Pops grabbed her out, and I was like, God, I wonder where that kid is now. Because I was just, and the dad and I just started crying. That's awesome. He gave me a hug, but I was like, it was just one of those calls where because at the time with the little girl, because she was, whenever a kid, like we look for a kid, like if a kid isn't crying, if they're crying and screaming, whatever's wrong with them, that's good, right? Because a upset kid is but when they're just somnolent, flaccid, like don't really care if you're touching them. They're just kind of like, and she was kind of gurgly breathing. I'm like, all right, boys, we got to go. I'm taking 3 fire guys with me. We're going to be doing a lot of shit en route. Let's get cooking. Right. And, because I just go into that whole, like, all right, let's mitigate disaster mode, and it doesn't, the emotion of it doesn't hit me, until afterwards. And that's, like I said, when I work on kids, man, they haven't had that chance to live life yet and see all the things that they've seen. I've worked on World War II. I've run cardiac arrest on a guy who was a World War II glider pilot. And I'm like, well, that guy had a good run. He made it through being a glider pilot in World War II. Jesus, with the stories he had to tell. But then again, he's 90 years old, right? I mean, he had a good run. But with kids. But man, I just remember that, and I remember that dad's face. I remember him giving me a hug, and I was just like, that fucking kid, man. That kid was all right, dude. I wonder where he's at now, though, because he's probably what, 13, 14 now, something like that. I bet. But that was
that's amazing, man, and praise God that kid was there. You know, angels working through that kid, man.
5 or 6, right? And this kid had the wherewithal to like dive in. I was just like,
Very cool.
man. Man.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's a good closing story for sure.
Yeah, man, absolutely, boys.
For sure, Walt. Well, Walt, I really think that we're starting to get to the point where we have several individuals that we want to make sure that continue to come back on this show, and we would love to have you back.
And same with you guys, man. I loved having you guys on. I mean, we've had a lot of the same guests. You know, like we talked about you with on Guy Schnitzler, right? When I talked with Guy, I think you guys came up and I talked to the guy in the Netherlands too the other night. That'll be out Friday. But cool. And you guys come up all the time somehow, right? Either you got somebody on, or you like say something, or you make me think of something, and I'm like, "Hey, you the EvoSec guys?" And I'm sure everybody's like, "All right, we get it, the EvoSec guys. I get it."
Well, again,
go ahead, Aaron.
We gotta have this. We gotta attack this on multiple fronts, right? Because
absolutely,
I'll tell you, you know, the best shows I can think of are guys like us that. You know, even someone like Mike Seeklander and Rich, that it's all they do, you know, they still can't get a ton of content out, you know. And then I look at my feed and I've got a brand new Mark Levin or Ben Shapiro show every dang day. You know, we can't do that. Mm-hmm. So we gotta you know, divide and conquer all this information. So it's awesome having like-minded people. So, man, thank you from me, and man, it's been a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to listening to this as a listener. So,
yeah, man, same, dude. I enjoy listening back. You know, I always pick it apart. You know, I'm sure you guys do the same. You know, I'm just like,
yep. Well,
you know, I just had to own the whole right thing. You know, I just #right. I just own it because it's just not going away.
Yeah.
Well, and Walt, we will be remiss. Please tell our listeners how they can either get in touch with you, your podcast. Of course, we share your podcast as well, but give them the kit and caboodle of how they can find you.
You can find me at, so the podcast is The Distinguished Savage, all things distinguished, all things savage. And you can also find me on Instagram, Distinguished Savage, which is the main place I'm at. I have a Facebook, but I always talk about, I'm like, I'm never on there. You know, I have a personal Facebook, Walter Settlemeyer, but I never pay attention to that, right? So, because it's so divisive. You can also, the website's coming. I swear to God, I've been saying it forever, but you can reach me at walt@thedistinguishedsavage.com, but Instagram is the best way to hit me up.
Well, Walt, I'll put all of that in the show notes.
I appreciate it.
I try to get the show notes packed, and most assuredly, man, I'll have that all in there.
Yeah,
man,
I appreciate it.
It's been a huge pleasure, man.
Same.
This has been a good show.
Man, it's always great talking to you guys, man. I always have a great time, and I always leave just with that. You know, when you have that good fellowship. I talked about this with a guy, you know, the other day, man. Just like, it's just incredible. You know, you feel exhilarated. You feel like excited. You know, it kind of reignites your passion. You know what I mean? Like when you just talk with great people and you feel that vibe, and man, iron sharpens iron.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, y'all have a good night, and I will
fellas, same.
Talk to you guys soon.
All right, boys.
Have a good one, guys.
Appreciate it. Take care.